hit the brakes hard. The tires squealed against gravel, and the truck rocked to a halt just feet from the massive animal standing right in the middle of the road. A brown bear, big, but not fully grown. Maybe 2-3 years old. Not a cub anymore, but not yet a beast. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He just stared. And somehow I stared back. It wasn't fear that froze me. It was something else. Something I couldn't name. Like my body remembered something my mind had buried. I slowly reached for the gear, ready to reverse, but the bear didn't budge, didn't growl, didn't show its teeth. Just looked at me with the kind of eyes you don't expect from a wild animal. Like he knew me, like he'd seen me before. A truck engine whined in the distance. I checked the mirror. Empty road. We were alone. Just the two of us and the humming spring air around us, thick with pine and melting snow. Then, as if nothing happened, he turned. Not in a rush, just calmly. Walked to the side of the road. Into the woods. I exhaled. It was only then I noticed my hands were shaking on the wheel. The road snaked up the mountains like a scar. Every turn hugged a drop steep enough to make your guts tighten. It had been over 2 years since I last came here. I used to know every bump, every shortcut. But the forest looked different now. Denser, wilder. The house was just like I remembered. Wooden, weathered, and half swallowed by the trees. The porch sagged a little more, and moss crept up the steps. But it still stood. Still smelled like old pine and ash. Parked. Killed the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. A few crows scattered from the chimney. Something about that made me smile. Inside it was dusty and cold. I threw open the windows, let the sharp spring air rush in. Threw some wood in the stove and lit it up. The flames crackled to life, chasing out the damp. I sat in the armchair by the window and tried to feel at home. Didn't work. I didn't come back here for peace. Let's be honest. I came back because I didn't know where else to go. City life had chewed me up and spat me out. Divorce finalized. Job gone. I needed space, and this place had plenty of it. And maybe, if I was being real with myself, I missed who I used to be here. A younger, more decent version of myself. Before everything got so damn complicated. The first night was quiet. A few wind gusts, some cracking branches. The usual, until I saw the shape. Big, slow, moving past the tree line. The same bear, no doubt about it. He walked along the edge of the clearing, then stopped. Just far enough to keep his distance, but close enough to see the flicker of the fire reflect in his eyes. He watched the house for a long time, then left. I didn't sleep much after that. Next morning, I found tracks near the porch. Deep impressions in the mud. He'd been closer than I thought. I should have been scared. Should have called someone. But I didn't. Instead, I made coffee and sat on the porch with my thermos, scanning the tree line like I was waiting for someone I knew was coming back. By noon, he did. Same path, same pace. He didn't come to the house, but he didn't hide either. He just existed nearby, like he belonged, like he had a reason to be here. And deep down, I knew what that reason might be. But I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet. 3 years ago, I'd found a cub in the river. Alone. Whimpering. Caught between 2 rocks. His paw was bleeding, maybe broken. He couldn't climb out. It was stupid what I did. Reckless. But I climbed down, pulled him up, wrapped him in my jacket. He was tiny, barely the size of a retriever. Shivering so hard, his whole body trembled. I kept him in the shed for 2 days, fed him canned salmon, and stayed up watching over him like some kind of idiot guardian angel. I never told anyone, not even Rachel. On the 3rd day, he was strong enough to go. I carried him back to the edge of the forest, set him down. He looked up once, made the soft sound, and disappeared. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that he'd forget. But now, staring at that bear just a few years older, with the same scar on his front paw, I wasn't so sure. I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. But in my gut, I knew. He remembered, and he came back for a reason. The next time I saw him, it was daylight. He stood near the edge of the clearing, behind the line of saplings, just watching me chop wood. Not hiding, not approaching, just standing there like he belonged. I wiped sweat off my forehead and pretended I didn't see him. I split another log, slower this time, hoping maybe he'd get bored and leave. But he didn't. He sat down. Saturday, like he wasn't some unpredictable animal, but a neighbor waiting to be invited over. Go on. Get out of here, I shouted, finally giving in to the tension. He didn't move. I raised the axe a little, not to threaten, just to make a point. You can't hang around here. People see you. Still nothing. Just that same steady look. It didn't feel threatening. Felt charged. Like he was waiting for me to understand something. Eventually, I went back inside. A few hours later, I looked out the window. He was gone. That night, I heard movement. Not just cracking branches, more deliberate. Measured. Something big walking with purpose. I got out of bed, grabbed the flashlight, and stepped onto the porch. My breath froze in my chest. There he was again. Closer this time. Maybe 20 feet from the steps. The beam caught his eyes, and they flared like amber. But he didn't run. Didn't growl. He just stood there and blinked slowly, like I was supposed to know what came next. I lowered the flashlight. "Why are you here?" The night didn't answer. He turned his head slightly and walked off, disappearing into the trees like smoke. He came back again the next day, this time while I was fixing the gutters. Just parked himself at the edge of the yard like some damn statue. I dropped the screwdriver. "You've got to stop this." He tilted his head. "I'm serious. You're not safe here. Someone's going to shoot you. This isn't a game." He stepped forward. Only one step. Then he stopped again. His paw lifted, bent slightly, the front right one. And there it was. A long, jagged scar. Right across the joint. I froze. I remembered how that paw looked. Wrapped in one of my old shirts. How he'd limped in the shed while I fed him. How he'd whimpered when I changed the wrappings. This was him. The same cub I pulled from the river. My throat dried out. "You remember me?" I whispered. He blinked. For a second, I felt like crying. And then, for a second longer, I felt terrified. Because memory is a tricky thing. It doesn't always hold on to just the good parts. The spring he came into my life, I was a different man. Rachel and I were still trying to save our marriage. We'd come up here for peace. For space. One morning, I went hiking alone and heard something crying by the river. That sound, it wasn't quite human, but it wasn't wild either. When I found him, he was wedged between boulders, his fur soaked, his paw mangled. I didn't think. I just acted. And when I carried him back to the cabin, Rachel was furious. "That's a wild animal, not a puppy," she said. "You don't get to play savior." But I didn't listen. Something in me needed to help him. Maybe because I couldn't fix anything else. I stayed with him, fed him, cleaned his wounds, even gave him a name I never said out loud. Benji. After 3 days, I let him go. Told myself it was better that way. Now he was back, and his eyes held something deeper than recognition. That evening, I sat on the porch with a bottle of bourbon and my thoughts unraveling like loose thread. He appeared again at dusk. No closer, no farther, just there. "I saved you," I said, "but I'm not sure you forgive me." I didn't know why I said that, but something in his stare made me feel guilty, like he knew the whole story. The parts one didn't tell anyone. The parts one didn't want to remember, because I wasn't the only one near that river. There was a man. 2 of them, actually. Locals, I think. I only remember flashes, voices shouting, one of them pointing a rifle, the other laughing. The cub was crying. I told them to stop. They didn't. I did something. I think I grabbed the gun. There was a struggle. Someone fell. But after that, it's all blank. Maybe I didn't want to remember. Maybe Benji never forgot. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind made me think he was outside. Not waiting, judging. Like he was here not just because I saved him, but because I owed him something. And I didn't even know what it was. Word spreads fast in small towns. Faster than wildfire and twice as dangerous. By the end of the week, people in the village were talking. About the bear. About me. I heard it first from the clerk at the general store. "You got a bear hanging around your place?" she asked. Casual but not really. I shrugged. Might have seen one once or twice. She didn't press. But she didn't smile either. Her eyes lingered a little too long. And that was the thing, nobody asked more than they had to. They just filled in the blanks with whatever made sense to them. And in towns like this, truth rarely survives the retelling. Then came the stares. In the bakery, at the gas pump, people stopping mid-sentence when I walked by. Conversations that ended too quickly or never started at all. It was like being haunted while still breathing. I knew the look. I'd seen it years ago after the incident near the river. A mix of concern, judgment, and fear. But this time it wasn't just strangers. This time it was people I used to know. It was a Thursday morning when Kyle showed up. He didn't knock. just walked across the gravel drive like he owned it. Flannel rolled to his elbows, mud still fresh on his boots. He didn't waste time on greetings. "You're feeding it?" he said. I stood on the porch, holding a coffee I suddenly didn't want. "I'm not feeding it." "You leaving food outside?" "No." "Then why the hell is it still hanging around?" I didn't answer. He took a few steps closer. "You know how this looks, right? People are nervous. That thing's not cute anymore. It's big. It's dangerous." "He's not hurting anyone," I said, quieter than I meant. Kyle shook his head. "Not yet, but he will. And when he does, it won't be you that pays the price. It'll be some kid. Someone's dog. Someone who didn't ask for this." I didn't look away. "He's not just some animal." "You sure about that?" He spat on the gravel. "You either drive him off or I will." I set the coffee down. "You show up here again with a rifle, I won't just stand by." His eyes narrowed. "You think this is about you and your second chances? That bear's a problem. You brought it here. Don't forget that." He turned and left without waiting for a response. That night, I stood outside longer than usual, lantern on the porch rail, bourbon in hand, and there he was again, just inside the trees, watching, not moving, not blinking, and somehow I found myself speaking to him. "You're making it hard," I said. "I don't even know what you want from me." Silence. Just whined through the branches and the faint sound of frogs in the stream below. A whippoorwill called in the distance. He took a few steps forward, slow, deliberate, then stopped again. Same scar, same eyes, same weight pressing on my chest. I remembered how tiny he used to be, how he trembled under an old blanket in my shed. That wasn't just a wild animal. That was a life I touched, and it never left me. The next morning, I drove into town. I thought about buying supplies, but instead I ended up sitting on the edge of the old bridge near the river. That place I never went back to. The place I'd pulled him from the rocks. My boots dangled over the edge, barely grazing the air. I sat there for maybe an hour before I even realized I hadn't moved. That's where Kyle found me again. "You don't remember it all, do you?" he said, standing a few feet behind me. I turned, startled. "What do you mean? You think you saved a bear and walked away clean?" I didn't say anything. My dad was there that day. The words hit like ice down the spine. I remembered two men. One rifle. One voice yelling. One falling. "Kyle, you tried to stop them. I get that. But he slipped. Or maybe you pushed him. Doesn't matter now." He hit his head on the rocks. Died right there. My hands clenched the bridge rail. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I didn't remember." Kyle's voice cracked. "I was 17. I found his body. I carried him out myself. Nobody helped. Because nobody knew. You disappeared the next day." Silence again. "I'm sorry," I said. "And I meant it. I swear I didn't mean." "Doesn't change a damn thing," he said. "But you better get that bear out of town. For everyone's sake. Or I will." He left me there by the river. The same river where the story had begun. And for the first time, I didn't know who the story belonged to anymore. Me? Kyle? The bear? That night, I didn't light the lantern. I didn't sit on the porch. I locked the doors and waited in the dark. Not out of fear of the bear, but out of fear of the truth. Because now I remembered more than I ever wanted to. And I wasn't sure what haunted me more, the bear that kept coming back, or the man who never would. It started with flashes, the kind you try to brush off at first. Shadows in your sleep, half-formed memories that vanish when you reach for them. But they came more often now, sharper, louder, like something buried was clawing its way back up. One of the first clear images. My hands, slick with mud, clutching a jacket wrapped around a bleeding cub. The smell of pine, wet fur, and gunpowder in the air. A voice yelling, not mine. A shout, a snap, then silence. I jolted awake in the middle of the night, my shirt stuck to me with sweat. Outside, he was there again, the bear, sitting, waiting. "You remember, don't you?" I whispered through the window. The days blurred. I couldn't focus. Every corner of the house had something to say. Scratches on the shed door, a dented flashlight by the back porch, a faded map with a red X near the river. Clues I had left for myself without even knowing it. Then came the full memory. It hit me while I was walking the old trail to clear my head. A low branch snapped beneath my boot, and just like that, I was back there. 3 years ago. It was early morning. The sky was overcast. I had gone out with a camera hoping to spot eagles. I didn't expect to find two men near the river. Locals, armed, laughing, and something was moving behind them. A cub, no more than a few weeks old, panicked and whimpering. One of them raised his rifle. I shouted. They turned. The older one, Kyle's father, I knew him. Everyone did. Big man. Always loud. Always right. "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled. "This ain't your business," he snapped back. "Just putting it down before it brings Mama Bear. He's hurt." They didn't care. They kept moving. I did the stupid thing. I got in their way. A scuffle broke out. I grabbed the rifle, tried to yank it away. In the struggle, his foot slipped. He tumbled backward, slammed his head against the rocks. The sound was like a crack of thunder. He didn't move again. The other guy ran, and I stood there, shaking, staring at the body. The cub was still there, pinned in the river, crying. And somehow, in all that chaos, I didn't run. I pulled him out, wrapped him in my jacket, and I left. I never reported the body. I never told anyone. I didn't even bury him. I went home, took care of the cub, and when he was well enough, I let him go. And then I left too. I packed up and ran from all of it, pretending it never happened. The guilt was a stone in my chest now. I sat on the porch watching dusk crawl in. And again he came, the bear, Benji. He didn't approach, just settled near the edge of the clearing, like he always did, like a guardian, or a ghost. "I remember now," I said aloud. "I remember everything." He looked at me, no reaction, no growl, but something shifted in the way he stood, like he had been waiting for that confession. I stepped off the porch and walked toward him. 10 feet, 8, 5. He didn't move. I stopped. "I'm sorry," I said. "You shouldn't have seen that. You shouldn't have had to come back." He blinked slowly. That was all. I don't know why, but I sat down, right there in the dirt. A grown man next to a wild animal, both of us holding on to something that never really left. He sat too, and for a long time we just sat. It started to make sense. Why he came back. Why he stayed close but never crossed the invisible line. He wasn't just looking for safety. He wasn't just grateful. He remembered the man who raised the rifle. He remembered the fall, the blood, and he remembered me. He had been there through it all. A witness, a victim, and maybe, in his own way, a judge. And I had buried it all. I had made myself the savior in a story I was barely brave enough to survive. But Benji, he remembered the whole truth. That night, I lit a fire out back. Not for warmth. For him. For me. He didn't come closer. But he watched. And I talked. I told him everything. Out loud. As if he could understand. Maybe he couldn't. But maybe it wasn't about him. Maybe I just needed to finally say it. I told him about Kyle. About the grief. About the fear that made me leave. I told him how I failed to make it right. And in the silence that followed, something cracked inside me. Not in a painful way, but like a frozen stream finally thawing. I didn't sleep much that night, but I didn't lock the door either. By the end of that week, they made up their minds. A vote was called at the town hall. I wasn't invited. Didn't have to be. The outcome was obvious before they even tallied it. Too many people had seen him. Too many rumors had taken root. The story wasn't about a man and a bear anymore. It was about danger, liability, fear. And so the verdict came. The bear had to be put down. The notice was stapled to my mailbox the next morning. Red ink. Official seal. Public Safety Directive. I stood there, holding it in the early fog, my hands shaking. Not from surprise, but from rage. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. Instead, I packed a tarp, a few cans of salmon, and drove up the back trails where the trees grew thicker and no one ever went without a rifle. He came like I knew he would. At dusk, I opened the back of the truck and sat on the tailgate. No traps, no cages, just me, the food, and the heavy silence between us. "Come on," I said gently. He stepped forward. I tossed a can to the dirt. He sniffed it, then looked up at me like he knew exactly what I was doing. "This isn't safe for you anymore," I said. "You've got to go, deep, where they can't find you." He took a few bites but never stopped watching me. When I moved to get back into the truck, he followed. Not inside, just a few steps behind. And when I started the engine, he walked after me. For miles. I found a remote clearing about 10 miles in. No trails, no cabins. Just forest. The kind that swallowed sound. I stopped the truck. opened the door, climbed out. He stood a few feet back, breathing hard, mud on his paws, leaves tangled in his fur. "This is it," I said. "You stay here, you live." He didn't move. I tried to walk away. He followed. "Benji," I said firmly now, "you can't come back." Still, he stood there. I picked up a branch and waved it. "Go!" He blinked. I threw the branch, shouted, stomped. It didn't matter. He just stood his ground. That's when I broke. I sank to the forest floor and let it all out. The fear, the guilt, the helplessness. And when I looked up, he had turned away, walked 5 steps, then stopped, looked back. I nodded, barely able to see through the tears. He disappeared into the trees. But that wasn't the end. They came the next morning, for trucks, 6 men, Kyle among them, rifles slung over their shoulders. Ice cold. "You lied," Kyle said. "You didn't drive him off." "I did. He was seen last night, right outside town." I said nothing. "We're going to find him," he said, "and we're going to end this." I watched them load up and drive out, and I did the only thing I could. I followed. They found him before I did. He was by the edge of the field behind old McAllister's barn. Not running, not hiding, just standing. Guns were raised. "Wait!" I yelled, jumping out of the truck. They hesitated. I walked past them, hands out. Slowly, deliberately. The bear didn't flinch. He watched me come. And then, before anyone could speak, he walked forward, right up to me, and sat, right at my side. I could hear the breath catch in someone's throat. Nobody moved, not even the wind. We stood there, the 2 of us, in the middle of a trembling silence. Everyone waited. I could feel their thoughts like static in the air. Is this a trick? Will he attack? Should we shoot? But Benji didn't move, and after a long moment he stood, turned, and walked back toward the tree line. One slow, quiet step at a time. No one followed. No one spoke. Later, the sheriff called it off. Said the bear was no longer a threat. The town didn't agree. They didn't say it to my face, but I felt it. The glances, the closed doors, the whispered warnings to children. In their eyes, I wasn't a man anymore. I was a risk, but somehow I could live with that, because something had shifted. I didn't run. I remembered, and I stayed. The bear was gone, but not gone. Some mornings, I see the shape in the trees. A shadow, presence, never close, never far, watching, not out of anger, but because he knows I finally saw the whole story, and I think he forgave me.